Alright, so we have talked a little bit on applying CSS to an HTML file. Now in this lesson, we're going to talk about the 3 common ways of applying CSS to our HTML document. We have the first method of using external style sheets. We use the link element to link the CSS file to the HTML. Now, in the link, we have the relationship attribute spelled as REL. In this case, because it's a style sheet, we use style sheet. Then we have our href, which points to the actual file. Now, because the style sheets file is in the same directory as the HTML document, we just call the style sheet file, which is styles.css. Now, this is the way of linking external style sheet to an HTML file. If, let's say, the style sheet file was in a CSS directory, the href will look a little bit different. For example, we will have CSS, which is the name of the directory, /styles.css. And we can see that works. Now, another way of linking CSS is to use internal style sheets. So instead of linking it using the link element, we're going to have CSS inside a style element contained in the HTML head. This isn't as flexible as linking the style document with the link as we saw in the last example, because when it comes to maintenance, this one is more cumbersome. For example, you have to include the style code in every HTML document. And if you want to change anything, you have to go to each HTML document to change it. But assuming it was a link, we would just change one file, and every other document that is linked to that file will have the effect. Sometimes you may need to be able to use this method because you might not always have access to the CSS file. This works just like the last example. The difference is that this is an internal style sheet. We have another method which is, will I say, more restrictive, and that one is called inline style. So what happens in this method is that you have CSS declaration for each single HTML element. I go to each element and I have a style attribute which contains the actual values of what I want. Like in this situation, this applies and has the same effect, but is more restrictive, and in case I want to make a change, the ripple effect is a lot more. It is better to avoid this type because, for example, if you decide to make a change, that means you probably have to make multiple changes in the same HTML file. And if you have multiple HTML files, the amount of change you have to make becomes a lot. And because you're mixing HTML and CSS, it makes it harder or more difficult to read and understand. So it's better to separate your code and the content.